So really with our hour this morning, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how men and women think, act, and communicate a bit differently so that we can adapt our sales process and sales techniques to become more effective and close more sales. And especially this is important today in what we're calling the new normal. Because nowadays, in the remodeling industry in particular, you guys have more hurdles than ever before. I mean, the budgets have been cut, there's a longer sales cycle. Combine this with the fact that the research shows now that 89% of all purchasing decisions are made by the female. And she's just not purchasing for herself. She's purchasing for her husband, her children, her parents, her in-laws. So we need to embrace working with this individual. Plus, the recent stats that just came out last week is now 37% of all women out-earn their husbands. And this is a trend that they're saying is going to continue, especially because 57% of all college graduates, again now, are women. We have to get better at engaging, persuading, and influencing a core segment of who we'll be selling to. Men use language to compete, and women use language to connect. Have you ever witnessed a couple of guys talking sports trivia to each other? You know, one will give an obscure fact, and then the other guy will have an even more obscure fact that he'll share, and then this guy comes up with the next one. That competitive hierarchy is actually a game. This is fun for guys to do, and they respect one another in the process. Women were just the opposite. You know, if a woman were to tell an incredible story about herself, the last thing another woman would do is to, well, let me tell you mine. You know, it just doesn't work that way. We're always about connecting, keeping the balance versus the one-upmanship. And I know this is sort of crazy, but you guys, it's true. I mean, I was at a soccer party, you know, a few years back for my daughter, and this woman approached me and told me literally within the first few moments of conversation that her butt had fallen. I'm serious. It's not one of my standard openers. I didn't ask her for this information. But another woman overhears, and she comes over and she's like, oh, I know, my butt has fallen too. She said, it used to be a J-Lo, but now my husband just calls it way-lo. And, you know, we laughed and we're sort of bonding over this stuff. This is what some women do. Now, I'm telling you, if a third woman showed up and said, oh, not me, man, you can bounce a quarter off of this, what would the other woman have thought? Because, see, that's not how women play together. You connect, you bond, you don't one-up one another. So there's a different way in how we use language. And again, this plays out when you're in the selling process. What does rapport look like to a woman? Well, let me tell you, it starts right from the get-go. Perhaps there's people in your business that set appointments for you, or you set the appointments. Now, we've all been taught in sales, have we not, that you want both decision makers at the table before you go out there and quote unquote waste your time getting on that appointment. And yet, believe it or not, even in 2008, it just happened, I was putting a new roof on our home, and the individual that called to set the appointment said, well, is your husband going to be there? I've even been asked, is there anyone else besides yourself that will be involved in the final decision? And again, I used to teach that technique, but I feel like that's become too much of a technique and it's starting to sound less sincere. And so I encourage you instead to just keep it open-ended and say, is there anyone else that will be joining us on the appointment? It's loose, it allows that information to come forward, and you can, if she says, no, it's just me, or no, it'll just be him, say, well, is there, because if you then all of a sudden you hear there's someone else, you might say, is there a way we could get you together? Just keep it real, keep it light, ask for what you need to be successful, but without making it sound like you're discounting either party. Does that make sense? So it's these small, subtle things that can make a big difference in how you make people feel and how you're perceived. And for those women in the room, because I teach this whole course spun now on how females should sell to men, if you're listening, I always encourage you women, if you are asked a question, to answer it in a sentence. Answer it in a sentence. Then if you need to provide more information, you could. So does this floor come in a variety of choices? Instead of going, well, it depends on Yes. There's 34 choices. Is there one in particular you're most interested in? You will win points. In fact, I encourage you to just not only use this in the sales process, but in life in general. Men are direct, women indirect. How many of you guys are married? So you already know this, don't you? Let's say you're out on a road trip, and you're on the road, and your partner says, "Do you feel like coffee?" What is she really saying? I want coffee. I want coffee. Pull off and let's get some coffee. So it's just the languaging and how, because women have a tendency to be indirect, which drives people, I know, insane. You got her coffee this morning. All right, Ken, you're in. But, these are the things that you have to almost listen through because they're always saying something. So if she says, would you be more comfortable parking your car down the street? What is she really saying? Park your car down there. Are you sure you want to leave the lumber right here? What's she really saying? Get it off my marigolds. All right, so there's always a message coming through, and so we have to sort of read between the lines a little bit because that indirect languaging is always communicating something. And so if you're sitting down with this couple and she says, I really need to think about this more, and he's like, no, we're ready to make a decision. Let's go forward. What's the likelihood that you're going to get a call after you leave that changes the game plan? Very high. So in that circumstance, you want to honor it and simply say, no, you know what? It sounds like you have some concerns. What other questions specifically can I answer for you while I'm here? Honor that, respect that versus just, okay, great, looks like we've got a deal. Men use very little nonverbal language. Women use a lot. We use our hands when we talk, we express ourselves. Have you ever seen two women that haven't seen each other maybe in a whole day greet one another? It's like, hi, right? It's just all woo and bubbles and up and, upbeat. And you guys are just the opposite. So here's where it gets to be a challenge in the sales process. Guys, when you don't give women feedback, whether it's a nod or a uh-huh, she thinks you're not listening, you're bored, or you don't care. And all three may be true. But you want to make her feel just the opposite to build that rapport and create that connection.